and I answer common questions that people have about meningitis and mostly about visual impairment, though. I try to explain my vision. We've talked about vision being a spectrum and how difficult it is to describe to people because people pretty much think you're either totally blind or you're normally sighted, and anything in the middle doesn't make sense to anybody.
Welcome back to the See-Through Podcast, a podcast that is creating transparency on life with a disability through raw conversations with the disability community. I'm the host, Lance Johnson, and I live in podcast with the eye disease, retinitis pigmentosa, or RP for short. In this episode, I talk with my friend John Grimes, the host of and man behind the Ambiguously Blind Podcast. John and I discuss his vision loss story due to contracting meningitis, how his family and friends responded to his change of vision, the great work he's doing with his podcast, and which fast food chain has the best burger. But before our interview begins, make sure you subscribe to the podcast. Make sure you're following on social media. The handle is @SeeThroughPod. And if you want bonus episodes and exclusive content, go join the See-Through Few over on Patreon. The link is in the show description. Here's my conversation with John Grimes. John Grimes, welcome to the See-Through Podcast, man.
Lance, tremendous to be here.
Yeah, the roles are reversed.
You're here to grill me like I grilled you.
Got some nice gotcha journalism questions
excellent.
Over here. So you're in your office. That's where you record the Ambiguously Blind Podcast.
This is where the magic happens, right here.
That's where the magic happens.
This is the studio, the office, the man cave, the kids' playroom. This is a multi-purpose room, but this is where all the magic for the Ambiguously Blind Podcast happens. You got it.
Yeah, I completely understand. I'm in my bedroom right now, and right over, to the right of me is my bed.
Yeah.
So
hopefully nobody's sleeping in it right now.
No.
Good.
My dog is in it most of the time. Right. But so where are you podcasting from right now?
I'm in the Dallas area, Texas, United States, of course. Specifically Frisco, just north of Dallas.
Frisco,
Texas.
I used to eat this burger from Hardee's. It was called the Frisco Burger.
All right.
Is that any relation to Frisco, Texas?
I don't think so, but let's just say so. Yeah, it sounds like it. How was it spelled? Good, Frisco?
Yeah.
Well, that's where I live. So maybe so. Nice. Then yeah, let's say it is. Was it good?
Oh, it's great.
I haven't had a Hardee's in a long time. I'm originally from Ohio.
Okay.
The heart of it all, Ohio, by the way. So we had Hardee's up there, but down in Texas, I haven't seen a Hardee's in 30 years.
Well, you have Whataburger.
Yeah.
And to be honest, I'll be honest with you. That's probably my favorite fast food burger.
Where have you had a Whataburger? In Texas?
In San Antonio.
Okay,
yeah.
They're great.
Yeah, my brother lived in Texas for a little bit, and I'd go visit. And every time I'd go. I like talking about burgers. Let's just keep doing this the entire episode.
I like burgers too. I had In-N-Out for dinner tonight, actually. You ever had it?
Oh, really?
With In-N-Out? That's like a California thing.
I've had In-N-Out. Yeah.
The crazy thing is where I live, and this might be the case where you live, there's a burger place on almost every corner. And it's amazing to me how they all exist because they're all slightly different from each other. And, I could have a hamburger for probably every night for 2 or 3 weeks and not go to the same place again. So there's a lot of variety in hamburgers.
Yeah, that's the dream right there,
good, man.
Whataburger is my favorite.
Yeah, that's good. They have fancy ketchup too. I don't know if you picked up on that.
I always like that addition of the word fancy to ketchup.
It makes it sound
nice. What actually makes it fancy?
Don't ask too many questions. Just take the fancy.
All right, so I'd be doing you a disservice if we only talked about burgers. So let's tone it back in here. So you're from Texas right now. You said you're from Ohio. I mentioned your podcast, Ambiguously Blind. I'm going to mess it up every time.
It's a hard word to say. I don't know why I did that.
So
but it makes it unique for sure.
Yeah. So before we talk about you, let's talk about your podcast and get everyone up to speed with that.
Okay. Yeah, you got it. So it's the Ambiguously Blind Podcast, and we've been at this a similar amount of time that you have, Lance, I think. I'm probably at about 1.5 years now. And we are, as we turn the new year into 2022, we ended the 2021 year at about 50 episodes. So moving into 22, we've got some pretty big plans and some things. I've got to reformulate some things, but it's something that I really enjoy. I'm having a really good time with. I've met some really, it's incredible the people that you can meet if you just start looking at it. And all the crazy stories and the fun stories and just new friends and buddies that you can make just by wanting to talk to people, just having conversations, which is what we do. I primarily talk about meningitis and visual impairment. Those are the things that are most crucial to me in my podcast because they have impacted my life pretty tremendously. But we talk about a lot of other kind of things too, sports, and we've even brewed some cider a few times. A buddy of mine, we've been doing some brewing, so we expand out and talk to other people. But the core of the podcast right now is mostly talking about meningitis and how that impacted my life, other people that have been impacted by meningitis and visual impairment. And I call myself ambiguously blind. That's how I introduce myself to people. So that's where the name of the podcast comes from, because you wouldn't necessarily be able to tell that I'm blind or visually impaired just based on a straight up appearance. I don't use a dog or a white cane. I am legally blind. I have 0 vision in my right eye, and I have 2300 vision in my left eye. So my right eye doesn't really track as well as my left eye does, but that's about the only thing that you can really tell that may be a little off about me. So it's kind of invisible. It sometimes makes for some interesting interactions, but I call myself ambiguous because it's really unclear. I mean, I could talk to somebody for quite some time or interact with people, and they would have no idea until they stick their hand out to shake my hand, and I don't see it, and they're like, "Oh, all right, so this guy's a big jerk," and that's what I'm trying to.
Oh, I've been
trying to not let people try to make people understand that I'm not a big jerk and I'm not dissing people and I'm not too good to shake somebody's hand, but there are visual cues that I will miss that you would normally think somebody would see, and that would be the indication that I have a
I'm familiar. I've done that plenty of times where I have a couple of central blind spots, and in my peripheral vision, kind of a smaller field of vision. So sometimes people will shake their hand and it's right in that perfect spot where I can't see it. And then they're like, I had one guy, he got real kind of angry at me. He was like, "Dude, shake my hand."
Sounds like a cool guy.
And I was like, "Oh, I just didn't see your hand there." But then it's like people don't buy it because they're like, "How did you not see my hand?" I'm like,
I think it's skeptical, So that's some of these inner weird, awkward things that happen that just, unless I'm wearing a sign that says blind, which actually I am wearing a sign that says blind. It says it in Braille.
I can see it. Is that what it says?
It says ambiguously blind, actually. Yeah. This is my nice shirt from iDesign.
That's awesome.
You should check out iDesign. But so what I'm trying to do kind of with the podcast is just talk about because I think as you and I discussed, vision is a spectrum. I didn't know that until I needed to know that, right? Like until I was 19 years old, I was in college, I got bacterial meningitis, and there was a very good chance I wasn't going to live through it. Meningitis is a wicked illness that happens very fast, and it can take the life of a otherwise healthy person in less than 24 hours, and it has done that many times. And on my podcast, I've spoken with people that have had it. I've spoken with people that have lost children and loved ones that have due to meningitis, and just how quick and fast-acting the nature is. So if you have kids, there are vaccines for meningitis, and they're can make it mostly preventable. So the good the years that you should be getting vaccinated for that, critically, are between the ages of 11 and like 18 or so. There's a couple of vaccines in there. And I would strongly encourage people to talk, at least parents, and for sure to talk to their pediatricians about the meningitis. It's ACWY are the strands, and there's also meningitis B, which is what I had. But I'm a normal, healthy college guy, and I went to bed one night feeling like I had maybe like the flu or something. I knew something was wrong. I had a cold or maybe the flu. It was flu season, and I woke up 8 days later in the hospital, and that was the new John, and it's been the same since. There's been no change in my vision. I have some other neurological issues resulting from it, but my optic nerves were damaged during the infection, and as an extension of a brain cell, the optic nerves don't regenerate themselves, so it's not correctable, and glasses or anything don't make any difference. So
yeah, so that's a wild story, and it's one that it's very unique that I haven't heard. One, there's, the main thing I noticed with that story is, for example, I have RP, and I inherited RP. It's degenerative, so it gets worse over time. You were in college, and you had this bacterial infection, meningitis, and then it just kind of tell me about that. Like, did you know you were sick? Did you feel off or?
No. Well, I knew that. So it was in February. So it was like flu season-ish, and I have 2 roommates. I'm in college where everybody's having fun. I'm in intramural sports. I'm in a fraternity. I'm a sophomore. I'm just doing, what 19-year-old college kids do for the most part. Right. Yeah. And I had never heard of meningitis. I like to tell people that I was 10 feet tall and bulletproof. I mean, there was nothing that could stop me. And I mean, I went to the doctor. I was a well, kid. I didn't have any issues or any other medical things. I didn't have anything. I was normal, about as normal as you can get. And then I felt like I was prone to like sinus infections and things from time to time, right? So I kind of felt like I was getting a sinus infection. I kind of felt run down. I mean, I just played a basketball game, and I came home. I took some like sinus medicine and went to bed. And then a few hours later, in the middle of the night, I woke up, and I mean, I was violently ill. Wow. And this is where it was more of an indication to me that this is probably the flu. But looking back at it, it was far worse than any kind of flu I've had then up to.
What kind of symptoms was it?
I was just vomiting profusely. And so I'm laying in bed. I feel the urge and I'm going to get sick. And so I immediately get up, and I'm trying to get up and out of bed, and my feet hit the floor. The thing that's different is that I fall. I'm on my face on the floor, because I almost have the sensation of vertigo, like my head is spinning. Ooh. And I wasn't I hit the floor with my feet, and I was expecting to go to the bathroom and get sick, but I hit the floor, my feet, and then the rest of my body, I'm like face down on the floor of my bedroom. And so that seemed very odd to me, but the more pressing issue I had was all this stuff I was about to get rid of. So I grab a trash can and go to town on that, and it was a sickness like I had never felt before. Yeah. And with hindsight now, haven't felt ever since. I mean, I've had the flu since, and it wasn't that. But meningitis is often mistaken for other things, and really the only way to detect meningitis, it goes misdiagnosed often, because really the only way to detect it is through a lumbar puncture, which is also called a spinal tap. So it's very hard to detect.
There
are some visual cues that you have it as well. You'll get purple spots on your body, on the body. They'll be like these weird, but I didn't have any of those. Okay. That's when you start seeing the purple spots, that's when things are getting really bad. Oftentimes there's amputations that occur because what happens is it gets into the bloodstream and it stops circulation and it goes to the extremities first. So like on my podcast, I've talked to people who have lost fingers and toes, hands, legs, arms. It's wicked, and it's wicked before you even know what it is. And for me, by the grace of God, I had passed out on the floor of my bedroom. I told my two roommates during this event, I said, "You guys get away from here, and you don't want whatever I got. This is bad news." And so they took my advice and they left. And I had a party the next day, and a friend of mine, a fraternity brother of mine, was coming over to get me to go do some things to get ready for this party. And the apartment door was open. He came in. He walked into my bedroom looking for me. This is in 1998. Okay. So I'm going to date myself here a little bit. This is 23 years ago. We didn't have cell phones. So you made an appointment with somebody to be somewhere at whatever time. And that's just what you did, right? You didn't change it because you couldn't text them and tell them I'm going to be late or I'm going to be early or whatever. So he shows up and finds me face down on the floor of my apartment. Calls 911, an ambulance comes, and they take me to the hospital. They originally thought I had a drug overdose because I was presenting like somebody that had been overdosed on a pretty serious drug or something, but that wasn't the case. And after probably about an hour or two of trying to diagnose me, they got the results of the spinal tap, and there it is, meningitis. So they immediately started treating me, and that's really what saved my life. So had my my friend not come over, and had they not diagnosed me sooner, we wouldn't be podcasting tonight. So there's a few times in there where things really could have ended for me. And there's a lot of other really unique parts of the story. I'm actually in the process of writing a book and talking about it. So there's some really cool things that happen, and some just miraculous things that happen that I think are worth talking about and telling people about. So I think it's a pretty good story, but it did take my vision and some other things as well.
It's a good story, but it's also it's scary. It's scary because in this especially in this time where we're in a pandemic, and you think about getting sick. Is meningitis something that like you contract? Like how do you get meningitis?
It's airborne, kind of like COVID. And generally the people that are most affected by it are the teenage population. It's generally going to be where you're in an environment where you're in a close proximity with lots of other people, like in dorms, or where you're at, like parties, or you're sharing drinks, or you're sharing, when you're more of a communal kind of environment, really is where it's most prevalent. But it has happened to people that are, I know of somebody that happened when they was 39, and he survived. He lost his legs below the knees, but he survived. So, but I would say, and I'm just kind of guessing here, but my educated guess would be that probably 90% of the time it happens for people that are between the ages of like 12 and 20. But since I'm an advocate, there's an organization called the National Meningitis Association. So I've connected with them, which is one of the cool things about the podcast, is I've connected with a lot of great people and other meningitis survivors and people that have been affected by meningitis. And through Instagram and things, I find people through the meningitis hashtag. I'm tracking 2 babies right now that are in the ICU with meningitis, like newborn babies. So
newborns.
Yeah. And it can happen to anybody, but it's most common between like 12 and 20. And I was 19 when I had it. So it is scary, but there are vaccines for it, and they are very good, and they've been around for quite some time. So they're very good.
Are most people vaccinated for this? Like for example, I have a lot of vaccinations as a kid, but I have no clue actually. I don't know what what
sure,
they were.
You mean you don't carry your vaccine cards around with you from your... So the answer is likely, but not necessarily, okay? So the The meningitis ACWY, there's 5 strands, they're letters, ACWY are 4 of them. There's one booster for that. There's one immunization for that has 2 shots. There's one when you're 11 and there's one when you're 16. And those...
It's funny you said booster because it's probably just top of mind.
Yeah, that's the world we're living in now, right? So
yeah.
That vaccine came about at around 2005. So if you were not a toddler in 2005, like if you were less than say 12 years old in 2005, chances are you probably don't have it, just because it wasn't available. But if you were born since 2000 or so, chances are you've got it because it would have been in the normal rotation by the time you got to age 12.
Yeah. I was born in 1990.
So yeah, there's a good chance if you did your normal pediatrician type checkups and things into your teenage years, there's a pretty good chance that you've gotten the vaccine, but there's no guarantee. But what's happening now, which is alarming with COVID, is that with everything being crazy like it is, people aren't going to the doctor like normal. So that doesn't necessarily affect you and me, but it does affect the teenage population that might be between the ages of 11 and 15 right now, that maybe they haven't gone to the doctor because of COVID and they're missing those vaccines. So the push that the advocates like me are trying to make is just to reiterate to people that when you're talking to your doctors and your pediatricians, make sure and there's other vaccines that people should be getting too outside of COVID. There's mumps and I have kids, small kids too. So we've got all kinds of vaccines and things going on and there's a long list and the schools also have things that point out to you what they should and shouldn't be getting. So there's lots of things that can remind you, but nothing is a guarantee, just like life. You've got to take care of yourself and nobody's more responsible for you than you. So you've just got to be aware of those kind of things. And I think that's the biggest thing, is just awareness.
Yeah, well, I'm glad there's a vaccine, and I'm glad that you're spreading the word on that. And
my kids are not old enough to have that meningitis vaccines yet, but I can guarantee you they'll be having the meningitis vaccines along with the other ones that are age appropriate for them. So yeah, it's a scary thing, man. It is scary. It can take the life of it's a miracle that I'm here. It really is, because there's a few times in there where things happen that are hard to explain. That I made it through it. So I'm very blessed to be talking to you and doing what I do every day. So
yeah, well, we'll keep some of your story a mystery since you're writing a book.
I do have to keep some of it a mystery because it is a pretty good story, and I've left out some of the intriguing parts. So yeah. And
I'm sure if you're listening, I'm sure listeners can go listen to your podcast and probably learn more about your story.
There's lots of pieces of my story. Yeah, we do. We've talked about meningitis and the other things too. And I've got a series I do with my wife called Questions and Answers. And I answer common questions that people have about meningitis and mostly about visual impairment though. I try to explain my vision. We've talked about vision being a spectrum and how difficult it is to describe to people because people pretty much think you're either totally blind or you're normally sighted, and anything in the middle doesn't make sense to anybody. And so I live in the middle, and there's a lot of people that have diseases of the eye, or in my case, like an acute injury or something that causes something in the middle. And it's hard to explain living in the middle sometimes. So that's what we do. So there's all kinds of information about that on the podcast.
Yeah, definitely go listen. And you said it 2 things. You mentioned you have kids, and I've heard you mention your wife. So that incident in college where you were basically found on the floor, that was in 1998?
February 1998.
So, and now I'm talking to you. Glad you're here, by the way.
Thanks.
And you have a wife and kids. So there's a lot of time has passed. A lot of things has happened.
A lot of things.
And then, so you have this, this life before meningitis. Then that incident happens. You lose your vision. And you have to, move forward. The world keeps spinning. How was that adjustment,
Yeah, that's a good question. Because there are certain elements of my life that I'm still adjusting to.
Yeah.
23 years later. But at the time, it's going to sleep thinking that tomorrow is a day. I've got a test. I had a political science test the next day. That's on my mind, and that life was just going to be normal, other than this little illness that I have. And then waking up, I was in a coma for about 7 days. So during that 7 days, all these crazy things happened to my body, and waking up with not being able to see, not being able to sit up in bed, I can't, it's hard to explain what.
Were you disoriented when you woke up?
It was darkness because I couldn't see anything. And so
and you didn't know, you don't remember passing out or anything?
No, I remember, I remember getting sick. I remember laying down in bed, and then I remember waking up in the hospital. Coming out of a coma is not like what you've seen in movies and stuff. I was in and out. My parents were there, which is, tremendous. I had friends and things there, but it was a constant stream of nurses and doctors and therapists in and out. And from the time that I became cognizant out of the coma, everybody wanted to ask me stuff. They wanted to, because they were trying to, see what I know, what's good or, what's wrong, cognitively speaking, physically speaking. There was all these tests and poking and prodding and just, so, I really, I couldn't swallow. My facial muscles didn't work. I had temporary paralysis. My muscles were all out of whack. I had a feeding tube in my nose, which is about as uncomfortable as it gets. I couldn't sit up. I was going to the bed, they were using things for me to go to the bathroom while I was in bed, so all that stuff is foreign to me. What's going on? What's wrong with my body? What happened is the kind of stuff I was wondering. And so I think the great thing for me is I had a tremendous support system with my family and friends, and I have a very strong faith in God and Jesus that helped me through all that and helped me through all that stuff still today. But at the age that I was, all I wanted to do was just get better. That was my mission from that point forward. It happened to me when I was in February. I was in the hospital for basically the whole month of February. I went home back to my parents' house where I was from, and I spent March, April, May, June, July rehabbing, learning how to walk, learning how to talk, learning how to swallow, fundamental things, basic things, And luckily, there might be some people that argue with me on this, but I didn't have any cognitive damage because that can happen too. I didn't have any hearing loss or no amputations, no physical really things that happened to me. But my mission during that time period was to get better. I went to school about 200 miles from my parents' house. So my mission was to get back to school and get back on my own and figure out what life was going to, I was excited to explore the new life. I was scared as all get out lots of times and did not know how I was going to do lots of things, but I was driven to try to figure it out. And it took a while to do it, but I did a lot. I did a lot of exploring in those times.
So you were in school and now you're out of school. So you have probably this career path you had envisioned for yourself, and now that's put on hold and you have to rehab. And, during that rehab process, were you told that your vision loss was permanent? What were you told when it comes to what you were experiencing?
Yeah. So I started going to, I had been to an ophthalmologist before. I'd been to an optometrist before because I had a slight nearsightedness. I'm sitting in the back of a big lecture hall. I wore glasses for slight nearsightedness. But I'd never been to an ophthalmologist, which is a doctor that studies disease of the eye and the actual eye itself. And so that's when I was introduced to ophthalmology, and nobody really sugarcoated it. I can remember even in the hospital, I had an occupational therapist and a physical therapist and a cognitive therapist. I mean, I had all kinds of therapists. And I remember the occupational therapist was, it was a woman. I didn't like her because she was particularly abrasive and kind of like, she was like Debbie Downer most of the time.
Oh, wow.
And while I guess I kind of understand where she's coming from, because most of what she said turned out to be correct, not all of it, but most of it, about the reality of what's happening. For me, I didn't think it was the right time for me I wasn't ready to, when I was in the hospital, still standing up and, doing lots of other fundamental things that I was relearning. I just didn't think that my career and things were, I wasn't ready to get to that level yet. I was still trying to get out of bed and take 10 steps forward. So, but she had some pretty abrasive kind of tones and things that mostly were true, but again, just didn't seem like the time. And nobody ever told me that this is really going to change. I mean, this is pretty much what it is based on what happened with me and the optic nerves being damaged. So everything everybody said really is what's been true. And there may be something that happens down the road. There's all kinds of things that happen with stem cells and CRISPR and other things that can happen that could make this better. But I decided long ago that I'm not chasing those things. I don't want to be on the forefront of those. I'm not gonna. With the little vision that I have, I tell people that I have about 25% of vision. I've lost all the vision on the right, and I have about half the vision on my left. So I don't want to mess with anything until it's, pretty, I'm not going to be the first guy to go to the moon, kind of thing.
Yeah.
I'll wait until moon travel is a good thing. So I don't want to go I don't want to risk anything with the vision that I have. So I'm going to wait until something happens, but I can't, I'm not chasing it. I'm not looking for things all the time.
Yeah, I have a similar viewpoint where I obviously support, science and research.
Absolutely.
And want to find a cure, but I'm not banking on it,
Yeah.
I
do really think that with technology and science and things, I think, I don't know if it'll be my lifetime or not, but, I think 50, 100 years from now, a lot of these things with the way that science is progressing, a lot of these things will be eliminated. I don't know.
I agree.
I'll benefit from that, but
yeah, I agree completely. So going back a bit, because I'm really interested in this. You're fully sighted, and now you're considered legally blind, and no one's sugarcoating it. And now on top of that, you have to rehab your muscles and all these other things. Your school life ends. That has to be just, your world got turned upside down, just to put it bluntly, basically.
That's about right.
And so what was that like, adjusting your mind to a kind of accept or not accept your vision loss?
Yeah, I was really not, when I was, there was a pretty long acceptance trail there. But for me, it wasn't just vision. There was lots of other things that needed to be accepted too. So it was a lot of things to work through. And the vision thing it was tough. I can remember, after the 6 or so months I'm at home, I do make my objective of getting back to school. I went to Texas Tech University, if there's any Red Raiders out there. And I just wanted to get back there. I wanted to get back with my friends, but I didn't have any friends that were blind. None, right? I think I probably knew people that had visual impairments or were blind. And at that point, I just would have known people that are blind because I didn't know what a visual impairment was. That again, you're blind or you're not. So that's how I thought then. And I didn't have any friends that they were blind. So it was, I was kind of, it was kind of in a battle for me to get back into the normal routine of what I was doing. But with the new limitations that I had, that none of my friends had, and none of my friends really understood because I didn't really understand them yet. Yeah, it was tough. I was trying to do things that I shouldn't have been. And then I stopped doing things that I probably should have been because I was unsure of my ability to go play. And like I drove, I was 19. So I drove for 3 years from 16 to 19. And not driving is difficult to adjust to.
Yeah.
And it's certainly something I took for granted. And I believe that driving is a privilege. You know, it drives me crazy when I hear people that have like DUIs and these accidents and things that happen, and they keep getting their license back. And I don't understand why we're letting people drive with those types of issues that cause injury to other people. When driving, I think, is a privilege. And I think you need to have a pretty good, healthy respect for driving. And because it can be gone. Can be gone in a second, and like it was for me. So I was adapting to like we're going here. So I had to like plan my evenings. Like, where are we going? We're going this place, and then we're gonna go this place. I've got school here, I got class there. But I never did that before. Or if I did, I just did it kind of in the back of my mind because it wasn't really a big deal. But I needed to know how I was gonna get from A to B, and then from B to C, and then back to A, and all those kind of things. Mm-hmm. And so those are some things that I had some major adjustments to. And I definitely will admit that I had some acceptance issues. And, you know, I would be in a class and we'd get put into groups or something, like a group of 8 people do this. And then so it was tough for me to have the discussion with these people that I don't know now about my situation. And half the time I faked it, at least half the time. It was easier to say nothing and kind of slide through it initially than it was to speak up and say something. In retrospect, talking about it would have made that situation easier, but I wasn't ready to talk about it yet. I was understanding and formulating my new way of life and understanding how I was going to do things. So I don't know, man. It took a while.
How did your friends react? You know, you're in a fraternity. You know, what did your family think? You know, like,
you know, as a parent, I would have been petrified sending me back to school.
Yeah.
In my condition. I mean, I was physically fine at that point, but just trying to figure out life again. I would have wanted to be there as a parent for my kid. And I'm sure my parents wanted to, but you can't. So, my parents were very supportive, and I've always been real close with them, and that just kind of continued through that. I had some friends that again didn't accept the new John. Like, come on, let's go, let's do what we did, and let's go here and do this and do that, and I don't know. I didn't really lose any friends, but I had to make some different choices about the people that I was with because I had a different set of priorities now, you know? Mm-hmm. And my friends were really accommodating, and which was great. But I know that there were some that didn't like the new John because he wasn't the old John.
Yeah.
They knew the old John.
Yeah. Yeah. It's sometimes it's hard for people to wrap their minds around, you know, even for me, you know, like I have some friends that I've known, you know, for the longest time, you know, in high school, and, you know, we'll hang out. Like I recently went to my friend's bachelor party and, you know, we're doing bachelor party-esque things. It was out in Palm Springs, California. And, you know, you want to go, you know, they want to go to the club, you know, and they want to go to these bars that are, you know, and I go to bars, but with people who are aware of my vision. But since I haven't seen these friends in so long, they haven't really been able to see or accept that I see differently now than I did when I was in high school or college. So I kind of do the same thing. I just kind of, it's easier to just pretend than it is to just say, hey guys, like,
there's certainly
can
times.
You guys lead me to the chair we're going to be sitting at. You know what I mean? Like, so but yeah, it's odd. And I think, that's something I never really talk about on this podcast that I've always wanted to explore, is just how it, if, other people, close. I'm not talking about society as a whole and this kind of weird, big picture question, but just people close to you. How do people close to you, interpret that? And that kind of leads me to my next question for you is, you're married, you have children. How was that process of, meeting your wife? And, can you walk me through that?
Yeah, it was, so, I mean, I wasn't any kind of Casanova or anything before, but, I certainly had lots of girlfriends and socially was, pretty active and all those kind of things. So, it was, I mean, just, it was different. I don't know how any way to say it. It was, you say my things got turned upside down. That got turned upside down too, because I didn't, so I met my wife after, my wife didn't know me when that happened. So it would have been probably pretty easy for me to, if things had worked out that I ended up with somebody that I knew at that time, because, that probably would have been a little easier to adjust to, because they were aware of what happened to me. But that's not what happened. I met my wife. We've been married for, what year is this? We got married in 2011. So we've been married for a little over 10 years. And
I'll edit that to make you look a little
right.
quicker.
Sure. Yeah. That's the one of those gotchas you're talking about, right? No, and she's the best thing that's ever happened to me. She's tremendous. But I certainly, I mean, dating is difficult in general. Dating for me with the visual impairment was challenging. I mean, I didn't drive, right? So normally guys drive, you go pick up a date, all that. I don't know if that stuff's how long that stuff's going to last into the future, but that's how it was for me. And so there's lots of things where I had all these little tips and tricks and things that I would do to, not that I was trying to hide those types of things, because I wasn't. Maybe initially I was, but when you meet somebody, it's, again, I could go probably a whole date without mentioning it, but that I was uncomfortable in those kind of situations, right? And I certainly had people that I met. There were girls or women that I went out with that it was a one-time thing, and I think a lot of it had to do with my situation. I mean, obviously I'm good looking, right? So it wasn't that.
We see.
But so not everybody's into that. And I mean, I do know that there were a few relationships that ended as a direct result of that. And that's fine. I don't, that's not the way it was supposed to be for me anyway. But it was tough. There were some tough things about it, but the silver lining for me is that I came out clean and with a great partner. Yeah, it's fantastic.
Yeah. Did you have a moment where you kind of, like, when did you tell your now wife that you have this visual impairment? Was it like right out the gate, or did you try to time it right?
I'm trying to think. It was probably right out of the gate, because and so my wife's name is Erin, and which is no secret if you've listened to any of my episodes. We met. It's kind of a cool story how we met too. We met at the homeless shelter.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I was homeless and she was surfing.
That's a Nicholas Sparks novel.
Yeah, it is. And she likes those too, so I got to be careful. I could turn into one. No. To make a long story short, we met through mutual acquaintances. They were volunteering at this homeless shelter. So somebody that knew me knew her. And so I'm not exactly sure what they told her initially, but within the first phone call or email or however things started, it was not a mystery. So I would say I was pretty upfront about it with her. But in the world of online dating and the world of meeting people, I did a lot of online dating stuff because, again, I'm going to miss a lot of social cues, right? So like if I'm somewhere, I'm in line at the bank, if I'm in a bar, if I'm at Starbucks, and like the normal thing where you catch somebody's eye, you know, like, hey, you know, or what, that kind of stuff, that doesn't happen to me. I mean, somebody may do that to me, but I don't even recognize it, right? So that's not how it was going to happen for me. So I needed to probably either know somebody or in the online world, you know, you put all your fake stuff up on there and people find out whatever it is when the rubber meets the road kind of thing, right? But I mean, I can remember being out with several people that they were okay with it. But I just like anything else, if it was a curveball to somebody kind of on the fly, I don't know how they should react to that, right? I mean, I don't know how I'd react to that. So but it was a tough time period for that, and just blessed that that the opportunity came around with Erin, and that she liked me enough to want to hang out with me for a while.
Yeah, and in a sense, it's like you weed out the people who, you know, you're either going to accept it or you're not going to accept it.
Yeah, and you don't want the people that aren't. Obviously, that's not going to do anybody any good. So
yeah,
it's just,
and that's people's choice. If they want it, if they don't want that, they can choose that. But you know, I'm not saying that it's a good choice. You know, because you got to dig a little deeper, I think.
Yeah.
But hey, you know, it led you to your wife. There you go. That's a win.
I wouldn't fault anybody for making any kind of, including myself. I mean, things happen the way they happen, and people come and go, and I'm blessed that I found Erin and that she found me.
Yeah, man, I love it. So where can people listen, you know, to the Ambiguously Blind podcast?
Well, that's the thing, is ambiguously is such a big word, and I misspell it all the time. You know, it's funny when I'm typing things out. So ambiguouslyblind.com is probably the best place to go. But again, that's a long word. So I would say Amblind is the short for that, and it's kind of catchy too. And there's some puns and things in there about Amblind. So amblind.com. So if you go to amblind.com, it'll forward you to ambiguouslyblind.com, and you can subscribe. I'm anywhere podcasts are found. So if you're on Apple or Spotify or anywhere, you can search for Ambiguously Blind or my name. You should find me, but probably there's pictures and things on the website, so you can kind of get a sense for the people that I'm talking to. And then of course on social media, I'm most of all places. I'm not on TikTok. I'm not ready for that one yet. But you know, it's something kind of crazy too, Lance, is you're a couple years younger than me. And I had really sworn off social media. I really just didn't like it. I got involved kind of in the infancies of those things, and as time went on, I don't like it, right? I despise Facebook. And so I'm like relearning all this stuff now as it's changed in the last 10 or so years. So with
I'll be honest, like if I didn't have a podcast, I would probably scrap social media.
Yeah, I really do loathe it. And I get on it to interact with people about the podcast, and that's pretty much it. Although, I mean, again, I've met some really cool people, and I do interact with them in social media and stuff too, which is great. But I'm kind of going through like things that I'm trying to learn how to do some real basic social media stuff that I'm kind of embarrassed. It makes me feel old because I got out of the game and had no reason to come back until I started.
Wait till you're on TikTok.
Yeah, dude. I just don't want to do that. I'm just not ready for TikTok.
Yeah. You know, I'm 31 and I feel like ancient when I'm on TikTok.
Yeah. I don't know. I'll get some ocean spray and we'll see if we can. You know, I've seen the videos. I've seen them. I just don't really have a desire to go to TikTok. But we'll see. I don't know. Maybe in 2022.
There is some good stuff on TikTok.
I'm sure there is.
I will say most of it is kids dancing.
Yeah.
Which is kind of odd. You get on there as a grown man and you
watching kids dancing. Yeah, you might end up with the police at the front door. So just be careful.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm like, what is this? You know, so you gotta be careful on TikTok.
Yeah, but I'm anywhere podcasts are found. Basically, was a short answer. Go to amblind.com, and that's the best place.
Yeah. Well, John, man, I think that's enough for this conversation. You could go and go.
Oh yeah, I could just talk blather all night. Nobody, everybody's got what they need to get out of this. So yeah, it's getting late here. It's evening time. It's about 9 p.m. here. So
10 p.m. here, you know. It's just later than I normally do, but again,
I appreciate you accommodating the guests. I appreciate that. That's fantastic. That's what we do as hosts.
Yeah, definitely.
It's nice to be on the other side of it. And the great thing for me is I don't have to do any editing for this, right?
I know. Dude,
I'm just gonna go to bed.
I get so excited when I go on other podcasts. I get so excited because I'm like, I don't have to edit.
Yeah. I mean, there's probably some things I wish I would have said differently, and I'd probably edit if I was doing this for what I said, but. You know, we talked about that too on mine, is the OPP thing, right? So it's nice to be on other people's podcasts. So yeah.
Well, man, enjoy your night. And,
I love it, man. Let's do it again sometime soon. You know, keep me posted. I'm sure we got lots of other things to talk about.
Yeah. We'll talk about, we'll compare burgers.
Yeah, we can do Whataburger comparisons. You might end up with a Whataburger. They just recently got bought by a larger company. They're expanding, so there might be one up there someday.
I would love that. All right, man, take it easy, man. I'll catch you later.
See you, Lance. Thanks.